Hi, I'm Paul Schaefer.
I'm Will Lee.
And you are watching the Letterman Podcast.
La, 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 la.
Welcome once again to the Letterman Podcast. My name is Mike Chisholm. Today, this is the fun part of this show is when they're all fun parts, I suppose, but I hate disclaiming that. I'll make a statement and then realize I have to disclaim it because I don't want to exclude the other things or people. Like when I say I have a favorite guest on, then it makes me feel like, well, what about all the other guests? Aren't they all your favorite, Mike? And they kind of are. I'm like a teacher who claims that they have no pets. I love the life cycle of some of the relationships that have developed in this show. And it's not like it's every single guest, but quite a few of the guests, they will have heard of me, or we will, I'll reach out to them and then we'll kind of start, they'll come on the show. And then after they come on the show, that's when the fun really begins because rapport is established and we're, moving towards a deeper understanding and all of that stuff. And this guy who's going to be on today is certainly an example of that. So that's me disclaiming how much I enjoy the fact that I've already built the rapport with Vinnie Favale. We go back, if you haven't watched Vinnie's first episode here, go back to when we had the brick wall and it was just, still, things are still kind of chaotic here, but it was really chaotic at the beginning. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Some would say that, Mike, you still don't know what the heck you're doing, and would probably have some valid points to that contention. However, things are better now than they were back then, and hopefully they continue to get better. Vinnie Favale has come back on. Now, he was the liaison between CBS and Late Show for the vast majority of Dave's run on Late Show. It was Vinnie who was in the control room representing CBS. He had literally a telephone where he would have to periodically call the boss of the day, Les Moonves being the one who was the vast majority of that time, the CBS boss. And Vinnie would be the guy who would make calls here and there. I get a chance to talk to him about a couple of those moments. I've got a list of moments that I thought maybe the network might have had to be involved. Today, I asked him, I think, about two of them. The majority of it was talking about our boy, Rick Scheckman. Rick and Vinnie, very, very close. And we saw each other at Rick's memorial, but we haven't really had a chance to break things down and to talk about it since then. We knew that we were going to kind of break it down together on the air. Vinny's going to come back on the show many, many times. There was a time where he and my boy, Scott Ryan, who wrote Last Days of Letterman, were considering maybe doing a podcast and talking about some of these things all the time. Vinny, I think, should have a podcast. He's incredible, real personality and opinions that are, as I say in the show, nothing short of expert when it comes to the landscape of entertainment. His background, with Howard Stern and Dave, like really interesting. Here's a guy who has ties to two of the most renowned broadcasters in history, David Letterman and Howard Stern. Again, if you want to know about the Stern stuff, go back, watch Vinny's first appearance on this show. He and I just basically shoot the bull for almost an hour. He had a heart out today, so it was great to talk about things. I know there's a bit of an audio issue on his side of things. His microphone would kind of come in and out. And I listened back and it's like, okay, well, there might be a little bit of difficulty hearing a few of the things there. There was one moment actually where his mic cut out completely and I didn't understand that he was asking a question about this show. I thought he was making a statement and, so there was a little bit of confusion on my end too, but that's okay. I'm going to throw it out there anyway, because there's some real fun moments in it. But yes, we know that there was a bit of an audio issue on his end for his microphone. The next time he's on and he and I do like a longer episode, we'll make sure that that's not the case. That being said, it's worth putting out anyway. I think for a lot of Letterman enthusiasts will really, really enjoy hearing from Vinny. He did a really nice job talking about some of the things our boy Rick Scheckman did behind the scenes and how integral Rick was to the production without being front and center. And, he listed a couple of things. I could list a couple more. I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago and they were talking about how many times they would just go and bounce a concept or bounce like a piece of video that had been, produced almost the entire way off Rick and say, is this okay? And Rick would be like, meh, could be better, shorter. that's good. Like he was this this title was film coordinator, but he was way more than that. It was nice telling some little anecdotes about Rick. And again, just being able to talk to some of these folks. I really, really like Vinnie a lot. He's a great guy. Very excited about presenting this episode of the Letterman Podcast. We're going to talk one more time. The one and only sponsor of the Letterman Podcast is Rupert G's Hello Deli. Go to hello-deli.com, get yourself a Late Show mug, get yourself a Late Show cap, Late Show with David Letterman t-shirts, that kind of stuff. Also, Rupert t-shirts. The deli is being sold. More on that soon. And we just appreciate everything that Rupert does. So hello-deli.com, the one and only sponsor of the Letterman Podcast with Mike Chisholm. Please enjoy the episode of The Return of Vinnie Favale. Okay, I've got a little bit of time with you for this one. I'm taking it. I'm so grateful to have you back here, buddy. I'm so happy to have you, Vinnie. Yeah, no, we're doing better. We've grown since the last time you've been here.
So. I had asked about the background. Right, I'm so used to virtual. Like I can tell you how many people I've spoken to who appear to be in San Francisco, but they're not.
Yeah, no, this is the real deal. I'm old school when it comes to this. I get energy knowing that I got one of your bridges back here.
Right. Now, where did that come from? Remind me how that we're talking about. People could see this actually, right? So where did that bridge come from? Does that really start?
Yeah. So you remember? Were you there for Dumpster Day when everybody was just devastated seeing everything just thrown away so quickly and all of that? Were you there for that?
Yes. I mean, I wasn't physically there. I remember, there was all these conversations about where the stuff goes. I just assumed that the show was taking everything that they wanted to. So yeah. that was my assumption. I was there. Those guys were so on top of everything, and I'm sure that they did. By the way, they took everything of value to them. Yep. Paul took part of his area.
Yeah.
So I was surprised that there was stuff left over, to be honest with you.
I seeing the video, because I had gone a month before, right? Like that night was a month before, exactly 1 month before, and so I was so familiar with the area because I was just there. And when I saw the dumpsters and all of these familiar things being thrown away, like a month later, if I would have known that, I would have had a U-Haul just exactly on the other side of the dumpster. And as they were throwing stuff in, I would have been putting the stuff into the U-Haul.
Really, everything. I think Ben Winston, the producer of the Corden Show's got a nice piece in his office.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure there are a few folks who have bridges. Some of them are in storage containers and things like that. I know Dave or Barbara, whoever made the decision, gave one of the big bridges to another show. So we've been, me and a few other people have been tracking down some of these things. But this guy here, this was behind Dave's shoulder during the monologue. So, in my basement studio, it's nice because, until the studio expands again, it fits perfectly.
That's great.
One of the union guys who continues to work for Colbert to this day. So I'm going to keep him nameless, but he saved this thing. And when he found out about what we were doing here, he's like, hey, and he sends me this video and I'm just like, yeah, we would like that. That would be fantastic.
It's fantastic. I'm sorry I didn't get to spend any time with you when you were there with your wife, right? At Rick's memorial.
I actually went solo to Rick's funeral, but I was hanging out with Steve Weiner and his wife and Alex. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want your wife to think you were there with another woman. Sorry, you were with you.
It was Lori. So if there's anybody, I think Candy'd be okay with that. I think my wife would be okay with Lori. But this is from that day, and it was so great because one of Rick's nieces came up to me and she said, would you like this? And I said, yes, I would absolutely like this. This show wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Rick. And I said, can you just do me a favor? Can you not tell anybody that you gave it to me? And she said, sure. Because I wanted like Kathy and the crew to see me across the street at the bar, walking around with it, thinking that I stole it. I wanted them to think that.
Oh, you're so funny. You're so funny. I love it.
Yeah. But I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to see you too. It was so nice. Like across. Oh, Vinny, it's so great to see you.
It was such an emotional
Yep.
day. I left right after because it was just like I was overwhelmed by everything. I was so overwhelmed with his passing that I couldn't even make. They kept on asking me. Kathy was great. She did an amazing job
Yes.
putting that whole thing together. And
Produced
she
with
had
love.
asked me, with love and a lot of talent because
Yep.
that's what they do. They're so good at it.
Yep.
And she had asked me to record something, and of course, absolutely. And then like I just couldn't. I didn't. I kept on putting it off and putting it off, and there were a couple of times where I was ready to do it, and I needed information to do it right, to really, and I'll tell you what it was. But and Rick was the guy to go to for that. I'm like, one time I actually was about to email him, like, hey, Rick, remember when we did that? Because I wanted to talk about a specific thing. And I'm like, oh, wait a second,
Oh,
that's not, yeah. So I
oh,
just, and Kathy was great. She did the right amount of asking, and then she knew that I just couldn't pull it off. And she
yeah.
was really good about that. But I thought, like, oh my God, the things that people said, I thought I knew him so well, and I did, and I do, but there were things that I didn't know. He had different sides of his life.
Well, that was what Morty said. Morty said, it was so crazy because there's this impression of Rick from the folks who worked at the show, and they knew him as the show family, together, that Rick basically worked his butt off at the show, or worked at Rick's pace at the show, and then went home and then came back, and that was his life. And then he said, but in death, he then realized how many different dimensions of Rick's life there was. And that day at Shekfest, seeing all of these people come together, like I loved meeting Rick's business partner.
Right.
And I loved meeting, or partners, his former partner, it used to be a 3-way thing, and then it became a 2-way. Like I loved hearing those stories. I loved hearing from people that he just went up the road with to all these film festivals and all of these, collectors fairs and things like that.
Right.
I met a couple of his comic book friends. I met it was so cool seeing all these people come together because of this guy, and how much he did give. Like, again, I would not be doing this if it wasn't for Rick.
Well, yeah, I remember him, like, and Rick was not one to advocate for other people often,
Yeah.
especially ones that he just met, like you. And he's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you got to do like if Rick said was okay, that was good enough for me. I would trust him implicitly with that. And it was interesting to find out that so Rick, like myself, when it came to the Letterman show, we were in service of the show. It was all
Yes.
about making whatever Dave and the writers and producers need to make it as easy as possible for them to do these impossible things.
Yep.
These challenges. But like there was a side of Rick's life where people were in service to him, where he was the David Letterman. He was the guy. He was
Yes.
the important person on those film festival circuits and all the things that were going on. And it was like amazing to see a guy that could put his ego aside for the Letterman part of his life.
Yep.
He was completely egoless anyway. But then, and I'm sure I know he downplayed all of the stuff he did outside of it. He downplayed it with me. He shrunk, it's like, yeah. So I'm putting together a film festival in upstate. Leonard Maltin's going to be there. That typical, Rick way of talking and matter of fact, his matter of fact manner. But yeah, just an amazing guy, and it was a very moving tribute. Very moving.
I could not agree more. And it was one, like I loved when Alex Bennett came up, and it was cool because, Dave's video played, and then Alex Bennett, like radio legend, Alex Bennett comes up and is up right after that. And Alex knew Rick so well. And the best thing that you could ever do for a film, like you think about the first time you saw Star Wars, or the first time maybe you saw like Jurassic Park, like one of these movies that just kind of bowl you over with emotion. And at the end of the movie, everybody just can't do anything, but they stand up and they applaud. And I love that Alex led the audience in doing that. That was so cool, giving Rick a standing ovation while that, we were in a movie theater. Like it was just a perfect day to say goodbye to him.
It really was. What's great now that you've afforded me this opportunity.
Yes, sir.
I could maybe do a rough version, an unpolished version of what I would have done for his tribute on the video. Yeah. Because there's two things. One was to really make the point on how important he was to the show creatively. Okay. There are people who worked on that show mainly segment producers, especially segment producers. I mean,
Yep.
everybody, I guess, fingerprints on the one way or another by doing stuff. The segment producers who in the early days, I don't know if that they were writers in the WGA, but they were in some ways as important as the writers themselves, because when you
Yes.
think about the written part of the show,
Yep.
was the monologue, obviously, the desk piece, the top 10, all the stuff that was going on, and then you had the segment producers who were producing the segments with a creative angle, making sure that the interview was funny, getting the boilerplate stuff out of the way. You got to move all this up this Friday, but these are the facts, Dave. These are the great stories that we should explore, and just go through it. And both the sides of the creative and the writers and the segment producers would often reach out to Rick for assistance, And one of the big things that was a staple of Rick, and people wouldn't even know it, but we're gonna tell them now, right? This is how they're gonna find out. What was when, the biggest stars you can imagine, Harrison, and it was really great when it wasn't the big stars like Tom Hanks and Julia Roberts, but the ones like Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren, who might not have been so up on the ins and outs. Like, of course, they knew Dave and loved Dave and knew he was a reverend, but didn't really always know how the show worked, right? So Dave would be like, so Harrison, the movie coming out, and Air Force One, let's show a clip. And sometimes the guests would be surprised because they didn't know what the clip was, and there was going to be a clip, right? And Dave would say, "Roll it, Hal," even though it was Jerry Foley directing.
That's iconic. Roll it, Hal. Yep.
Roll it, Hal. And it would be a piece of Shekfest footage already lined up that was somehow related to the subject matter. So if it was Air Force One, it might have been some black and white public domain footage of the Wright brothers dancing on the wings of a plane, or Laurel and Hardy, whatever it was. And Harrison Ford would be deadpan, like, you got me there. But the audience would always love it, right? And then it was like, okay, let's show the real clip. Oh, we don't have to. But then we'd move on, or sometimes they would show the real clip. And it was just like, that was all Shecky. That was a phone call probably a couple of hours before showtime. It's like, Shek, we need anything that's comical related to aviation. Boom, done. Whatever the subject matter was, that would be coming in. So that was like one thing I had wanted to say of his value to the show, and not him only knowing that there were the fact that there was a system in place where you could take aviation clips, and suddenly it would show all of the public domain footage that he owned or had rights to. The fact that Shek would also probably would yield 100 results, and he was smart enough and funny enough to know the show to say, okay, these are the 4 you're going to choose from. You're not going to give him 100. Let me give you the ones, right? So that was one thing, and that was a constant in the show. That was going back to the early days. Yep. Another thing that he did that is probably my favorite contribution of Rick's. He was, as you saw in the videos, he was Elvis. He played all these different roles on camera. The Xerox machine, iconic, right? All of that. Or faxing, right? Did he Xerox? Did he fax some stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Naked. Was it? Yeah, I forget what that was, but that was great.
Yeah, it was the shower copier, I think it was.
The shower copier. Yeah. By the way, a lot of the stuff we're talking about can be seen on Dave's amazing YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
Which is now all the Late Show stuff, and they did a beautiful tribute to Rick that's up there as well. So
and Shekfest is up there. Like, I was so happy that they gave it to Walter, and Walter could throw Shekfest. Like, anybody who wants to see the entirety of Shekfest, I highly recommend it. It's about 90 minutes long.
I haven't seen it yet. That's great to know that it's up there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fantastic. It's perfectly produced. You don't get quite the feeling of being in the audience, but it's close enough that the goosebumps translate. It's amazing. Okay,
so my stuff is basically the DVD extras. Okay,
yeah, great. That's this entire show.
Yeah. The other thing that he did, which I think is the funniest contribution, the most amazing one, because it had legs. When Dave goes to the well, sometimes they're one-offs, but when Dave goes to the well, the same thing many, many times. long after the expiration date, in some people's opinion, on,
Yep.
are we still making this joke? But
Yep.
it's like, no, if Dave thinks it's funny, there is no expiration date, right?
Exactly.
So typical network sweeps event that happened with CBS was the morning show, where someone, I guess, decided that we're going to show Harry Smith's colonoscopy on TV. We're going to promote the hell out of it for Colonoscopy Awareness Week, whatever, right? So that's a given that happens, and Dave obviously found that amusing, as he should. And Harry was on the show promoting it, so it was a thing. And I think the first time the clip was shown was when Harry was a guest promoting
Yes.
it. I think, again, that's the kind of stuff that Rick would know the answer to. And I would
I'll ask Dawn about it, but I think you're right though. Like that's my memory of it too.
I didn't want to do it without the right information. I would have said, "Hey, Rick, remind me, give me all the beats of this. Harry Smith announces he's going to do it on CBS. Dave, I think we both carry on. And then when did the stuff start happening? The comedy, which I don't know the timeline of that, but the big stuff, the important stuff, I know. And so one of the writers, and this is another thing, I want to know who is the writer that reached out to Rick, to just kind of paint the picture, which maybe you could find out.
I'll ask Matt Roberts about that. He'll know the answer to that. That's a great call.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, I told Matt this story at the eulogy, and he loved it. He had forgotten all these stuff.
Yep.
So Matt could probably weigh in, especially if he produced that segment. But someone obviously went to Rick and said, "Listen, I need archival footage that will work with Harry Smith's colonoscopy." Whatever, you do the math. If someone came to you on that, you'd be like, I'd start crying. It's like, I don't know what to do. What are you talking about? Rick, not a problem. And by the way, I want to see the other footage. Again, Rick could have answered this question. So how many things did you give them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes.
Well, I know we might have just given them the one.
Yeah.
But so Dave says, and we have footage of Harry Smith's colonoscopy, and it cuts to some black and white footage of a man and a woman, and the man was wearing a hat, black and white, 1940s, right? He goes to the woman, "After you," and they both walk into a tunnel, right? A tunnel, and it's like one of those classic, B-movie tunnels, underground tunnels, where you see the rock. The way I remember it, at least, the rocks, jagged edges, and they're going through, and they're making their way
with the torch. With the torch.
Right, exactly. You remember. And I wish someone put together all of Dave's comments, like, "Oh, good thing he brought the torch with him." So it was so goddamn funny, that clip. That was the perfect illustration of the brilliance of the Letterman show, that you could create a show where ideas like this could live, and live comfortably, and be funny, and be familiar to the hardcore fans. So that was beautiful, and that became a running joke forever.
The thing I loved about that running joke, so Matt Roberts was recently on, and he talked about, like, Weekend Late Show was supposed to be a one-off, but Dave
the Weekend,
loved
that was
it.
so good. It was death. The audience would, like, you could hear crickets. It was like there's nothing going on.
Yes. Supposed to be a one-off. Dave loves it. So Bruce and Linda ended up becoming a fixture, and they kept going and going and going. With the Harry Smith thing, them walking through the cave and all of that, Dave would then, weeks, months, years later, ask for a piece of, okay, so can we see a piece of that? And then that would show, but then he'd say, "Oh, no, that was Harry Smith's colonoscopy." That's what he would say. He wouldn't say, he would still go back to bring it up. Joke.
I know. It's just so, they would do callbacks that people, a lot of people had no idea, because, the thing is the show, when you did a sitcom like Seinfeld, you could do a callback to the previous week, because it's a half hour scripted, like people, I know what they're talking about. Yeah, that happened last week. With Letterman, he just did his show, God bless him, under this idea that, well, listen, if you get the joke, you get the joke. If you missed, one of our 200 episodes we did this year, that's your problem.
That's right.
If you missed that first origins of the Harry Smith's colon.
I think that's why, I've had a couple of, like, writers, people who have analyzed the entire landscape. We've had Zinnemann on, and we've had Bill Carter on, and they've talked about the idea of there being like a club here. When it comes to Letterman versus any other franchise in history, the club aspect of Letterman, where or you don't know, like you're in or you're not in, like that is one of the ingredients, I think, to that, if you want to call it like the cult status or whatever,
or just that you know what, yeah, actually beyond cult, the thing that just made it such a classic, groundbreaking show. These shows, there's no thread through the Tonight Show. It's I still watch Johnny Carson. I still am watching the rabbit hole of the Rodney Dangerfield, Don Rickles clips and all the great moments and the stand-ups and the Doc Severinsen Thanksgiving story. But those were they stood alone. They were their own thing. There weren't really any callbacks. Maybe within the show there might have been a callback with Dave. Like, they were real characters. These people. Rupert was a character, a go-to. Maybe Steve Allen did some of this. I don't know. I haven't really done a long, watching Steve. But again, Dave did this for many, many years. That's the other thing. So it's amazing what he did. It's its own thing. There'll never be anything like it. Thank God there's the YouTube channel to resurrect a lot of this old stuff.
And it's funny, it's working too, because this new generation of, and it's funny because watching Dave in the later years, you could see where, there was pressure. Like when the laptop showed up on his desk and they're like, okay, you should start tweeting or putting out these little viral moments and stuff. And I mean, I could just see him laughing at them going, what the, no. But the ironic part is that show had so much gold for the current audience of that logic or that persuasion, where it's like, no, we need these 3 to 5 minute clips. Well, Walter and his team, I mean, my gosh, they're literally, they have a gold mine that is virtually limitless. If you want 3 to 5 minute clips, no problem. We'll give them to you, and we'll give them to you forever, because the show actually did have many of those types of moments. And right now, like, I look at my kids, the part of the reason I do this show is because I don't like the fact that people are forgetting who Dave was and the groundbreaking thing. Like, we're archiving this stuff anecdotally, right? My kids are actually now like on to the Letterman YouTube channel. They're like, oh, this moment was really funny, or that moment was really funny. It's like, yes. Thank you for joining the conversation. And it actually does translate really well and is going to outlive. And when we talk legacy, the Worldwide Pants legacy of what they've done in entertainment, in broadcasting, is going to move on. And that YouTube channel is proof positive. If you look at the views, it's crazy.
Well, they're doing stuff that Dave would never have done on the air.
Yes.
Which is, I don't want to use the word exploit, but be super topical in a very smart business way. Like, we might suggest, the network might suggest Dave to do a certain thing because this was going on, whatever was going on in the world, and kind of get in on that, and like, not going to happen, But no, like even he was also very, very closed off about licensing clips of celebrities, because he didn't know how they were going to be used. Like when and this was so great. Like when Farrah Fawcett did that appearance on the show where she was really out of it, and it was really, really sad. I think Dave, obviously, felt the same way afterwards. He refused to put any of that stuff out. You won't even see it on the channel. It's my guess. If he did, it's okay. But like, he would never take advantage of like maybe making somebody who were like parents, because think about like this archive that they have. But now, when a celebrity dies, like within 24 hours, and it's not exploiting it, so that's not really the right word. It's just really, you'll see Tina Turner dies, and within 24 hours, and this is really Walter's doing, which is amazing. But again, under the blessing of Dave, you get the interview, Tina Turner interview, like within 24 hours, which is wonderful because you get to see her in a light, an extended light, not this montage of clips. They did it with Little Richard, but they did it. They do it. It's a thing now.
Yeah.
So I love that he's doing it, and he's doing it in a way where he can control it in a smart way. He knows it's not part of a documentary where they're all beating up on Farrah Fawcett or making fun of it, or it's all within, like, no, this, nothing is out of context. Ladies and gentlemen, Tina Turner interview, and that's it, and it's done. So you get to see them. It's better than an obituary in some ways. You get to see them.
I could not agree more. It's a tribute of them in one of their most, like, Sinead O'Connor just passed. Guess what? She made her network television debut on late night, and here it is. And so you're seeing her at the time in her career where she was starting to explode, and it was happening. And it also shows the credibility of the show, because how many of these folks made their network television debut on, from a comedian to musicians to, actors? It was their first kind of step into the limelight. And if they show one of the first ones, or they show one of the ones mid-career, what a great, fitting, amazing tribute to them, as they have passed on to the next, whatever the next thing is.
Absolutely.
I could not agree with you more. It's such a, the different phases of, it's just like interviewing some of these writers who were there at the very beginning. Okay. Or the writers who came over from the Saturday Night Live exodus. Okay. Or then you get the people, the first generation, the Dave Rogalskis of the world, who came in, who loved the show, and then they got their first writing gig at the show. And then you get like the Joe Grossmans of the world, who are more Gen Xers, who worshiped the show growing up and then got a chance to work at it. It's the different phases of people, and the phases of the Letterman, legacy are still revealing themselves. And right now, one of those phases is these tributes and these obituaries. It is fascinating to see this.
It's beautiful. Yeah. So it's really, really great. And, Rick was so, getting back to Rick, was so invaluable. I think even to just, I'm sure, helping Walter with the launch of the channel, even just by his legacy, just, with all the information. Like, Rick was the guy you went to. Rick was our Wikipedia. Let's call it Wikipedia.
Yes.
Yes. He was our internet. He was my go-to guy for even long after Google was established as a thing. I'd go, tell me what you know about such and such, 1940s B-movie actor, and boom, he would give me like a great take on it, and then suggest you might want to look at this movie. You might want, Rick was AI. Rick was entertainment AI. You could just
instant callback too.
The data sets within Rick were amazing. All of this information that he had, and a lot of it also about the show. He was resource for the show. So yeah, he's gonna be missed terribly.
Could not agree more. Okay, I've got you for about 25 more minutes here. You're gonna come back, so I'm gonna tell the audience right now. We're gonna have Vinnie back as many times as he's willing to be on the show. I adore this guy.
However often you want.
Oh, fantastic! I appreciate that. There are a couple moments that I do want to ask you about. In particular, the last time you were on, you talked about the John McCain moment, which I loved so much.
Oh, that was so good. Yeah,
it was so good. And when Randy did her, I'm still nudging Randy. I want to get Randy on here so bad, just even to talk about the final montage and whatnot. Just even to talk.
How come Randy won't do it? She's too shy, or
there are some people. Let me go zoom out, and I'll get a little broader here, because I don't want to. There are some people who want to come on here very badly. Right. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, if there's anyone that is like on the fence because of their own reasons, whatever, I'm happy to do it with Randy or anyone else. You could use me as your Ed McMahon, if you will, just to make it easier, because we could, I could help, maybe remember things, or she might remind me of stuff. So yeah, whatever you want. If they want me with them.
I saw her really quick at Shekfest in the flesh for the first time. That was really, really nice. But there are some people who are just very unsure. And it's one of those things where I don't know if we'd have enough to talk about, when the reality is the moment someone gets on the other side of the camera from me, I can keep them talking for hours, because I just pull stuff out. Right. But Randy did a really good job on the official Letterman channel, talking about the McCain moment. I'm so happy that it went up there. So if you want to,
she spoke about it. I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah. So go back to Vinnie's first episode on the Letterman podcast. Go to the Letterman or the actual Letterman YouTube channel and look at Randy Grossick's favorite moments, and the McCain thing was in there, and it's fantastic. Those are the moments that are, I think, universally, whether people were fans of late night and they thought Late Show got too big, or they were fans of Late Show, they thought late night was too small. One of the things that always translated, and it seems universally loved by everybody, are the moments that are unscripted, where the crew gets involved and you're like, okay, what are we doing now? Is this okay? Is that okay? When Dave would talk to Hal, but not in a pre-scripted way, it was like real time, or talk to Jerry, or talk to,
Right.
I got to ask you, and this is, you can find it on the Letterman channel because it's a phenomenal moment with Nancy and Jerry, and I think you might have been involved too. The Eagles moment, the time when on the show they wanted to play an Eagles song. And,
right. I remember the licensing was a licensing issue, right?
And
like
you were talking about it real time during the show with the cameras on. And,
yeah.
No, Paul, play a few bars. And Nancy's like, no, don't do it. And Jerry's like, you should do it. And Chef came in and he said, no, you can play 3 seconds of it.
I remember that. On my end, I was probably doing more logistical work, trying to see if I could intelligently give a ruling to say, you know what, we'll back you up as a network. I don't think I was able to do that, but that was my recollection of that, trying to figure it out.
I have one question about that specifically for you, because obviously you're in the control room. You know, again, go back and you'll find out, if you watch Vinny's first appearance on here, you'll find out what his role was in the show. He's in the control room sitting with Rick and Randy and Jerry and all that. Yep. But he's the CBS guy. So at some point, the message comes forward that, hey guys, CBS actually has a version of Life in the Fast Lane that isn't Life in the Fast Lane. It's a mock-up of the song called, High Voltage or something like that. I forget the name of the song. Yeah. But it's like, we can play this song, and it sounds kind of like.
Yeah. That's a thing in television called needle drops. Where you get something that sounds like Tom Petty or sounds like the Eagles or a song. They use it in advertising all the time.
Yeah.
When they don't want to license the song.
That was my question. My question was, were you the guy that pointed them out to the CBS friendly version of this song?
You know what? I don't recall. It could have been Kathy. It could have been just. I don't remember. I'd be lying if I said I remembered. So I don't know. It could be, but I don't recall.
Okay, so for anybody who's listening to this, go back to the Letterman channel and look up the time that they wanted to play the Eagles. It was a fantastic segment with everybody getting involved, and Paul and the band was about to play it, and you had Nancy screaming, "No, don't play it!" And it just, those moments, moments like that. The show wasn't live, but it felt live during those moments.
I had a moment that I was directly part. I may have said this on the other one. I apologize if I repeat.
No, please.
Just cut it out. But I do remember one thing that I was involved in, and I think this show was actually submitted for the Emmy, because you know the way the Emmys work, right?
Yeah.
They don't give them every year for that body of work. The show has to. Of the 200 some odd shows, they submit the one they think is Emmy worthy,
Yes.
And I think this episode I'm about to talk about was submitted one. I remember CBS was airing a remake of On Golden Pond. And, oh God, what was the word? There was, I think the word was shit. I think that it was a big deal that CBS wasn't going to loop it.
Right.
Because it was a prestigious, primetime 8 o'clock. It was a big deal. And the Monday after, Dave decides, I want to go to say that. I want to go to say shit. And I said, well, you can't. That was scripted. And I fell right into his trap. I think he knew that he was never going to go to green light for it, right? But they were pushing to the point where it was getting ugly, right? And I was dealing with the censors, and finally...
It wasn't Schitt's Creek, was it?
It was on Golden Pond.
It was on Golden Pond. Okay. Yeah.
That we were beyond that at that point.
Okay.
Sticky thing, yeah. This was literally the word shit being used in CBS making, Leslie green lighting. It's okay because again, it was a prestigious. I think James Bond was in the movie. It was a big deal. It was one of the movies of the week were a big deal. Probably the late 90s. and then so Dave says, it's interesting. We're trying. CBS aired this the other night, and they played a clip of it, and with the curse, right?
Yeah.
Because so they can say it, but I can't say beep. And they can play the clip, shit. But I can say beep. That went on. I don't know the beats of it, but that's the gist of it. And that's a classic moment, I think, that people probably, then maybe I'm remembering it more because I was involved in it directly, but take me out of the equation. It's a great story, right? It's
Absolutely.
a great story. Remember that time when Dave, the network told Dave he can't say shit, even though they said it in prime and they could play the clip, shit, so those are things like that are like, they're like moments that make certain Seinfeld episodes better than other ones,
But not that there was anything wrong with that.
Right.
Like,
that's the episode. Yeah.
Where you play with,
you could probably come up with over 100 of those moments, extended moments. Let's just call them things that could be considered. Oh, that was the episode when Dave did that thing. Remember the episode of Late Night when Andy Kaufman got into a fight. Remember the episode of Late Show when these things happen, the Eagles thing happened. They become things. They get lost to time. That's why this is this a podcast, a webcast? What the hell is this thing anyway? But this is why your show is important. What you're doing, things like this.
Yeah.
What is this? How do you describe this show? Is it
this show here? This show here? That's okay. So this is a celebration of the greatest body of broadcasting work in history.
What is it though?
I was gonna say it's a podcast, but then I throw it on YouTube because of this part of it, because people like to see the animated versions of it, and that seems to be what everybody's doing these days. I get
it. It used to be called vodcast, vogging, all that crap.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of them all.
What do you think? More people listen to your podcast
right now? More people, but with Spotify though,
which makes sense.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
But there's video on Spotify now too, so it's blurry because people can see it on Spotify now, just like on YouTube. So Spotify's moving over into the other area as well. So
while if I use Spotify to listen to podcasts, I'm listening to yours, but I have video.
You could watch it too if you wanted to. You could take the phone and you could watch it as well, or whatever.
Yeah, I guess you know what I get why the audio would be more popular, because you could do other things when you're listening. Like just before, I'm working on a project right now, just a lot of media work around the house, and I was listening to Mark Maron's podcast.
Yes,
and I'm sure I can watch it while I was doing what I was doing, So, but sorry for the tangent. We went into the tangent.
No. I'm grateful for it because we're trying to figure it out still too. We just know that we want to be this archive, but at the same time, we're trying to figure out the best way to present it. I know YouTube is essential as well because some guests, they bring on visual aids and things like that. I do think YouTube is the best way to watch the show or consume the show, but we want to make sure that it's available for anybody who has the persuasion of podcasts as well. So
yeah, don't lose sight of the audio because I really do think that's important.
I appreciate that very, very, very much. Okay, so we got 15 minutes. There's another thing I got to ask you about. There was a time on I want to say it was around the time that Fallon took over for Late Night. So around that time. Now, I loved Ferguson so much. For me, the golden age of late night is probably late night television, I should say, is probably around the time Conan had lost the Tonight Show. So probably 2011, 2012, Conan gets his own show on TBS, which I thought was incredible. I was already watching the 1-2 punch of Dave and Craig Ferguson. I loved Ferguson so much. Right. But then there's a time when, again, this moment that you were talking about where Dave was tweeting, but then he would try and tweet out to Jimmy Fallon. And then at a certain point, he came on and all Dave said on the air was, well, we're not going to be tweeting to Jimmy Fallon anymore because it makes the network sad. And that was how he referred to it. And I wondered if you had any insight.
Well, it's funny because the only thing that it almost sounds like something I would say, but not for the reasons that you would think. Okay. Like I thought the whole tweeting thing was silly at the time. because it was still relatively new. And my thought was, the show is a tweet. Like, he's on, like, people tweet because they don't have a platform, like and no one gives a shit what they have to say. Anyway, he's on TV every night for an hour. Why does he have to? It just felt, I can't use those words. I found it sad that we were trying to do that. And maybe they were doing it tongue in cheek, and maybe I missed the whole point. I know there seemed to be an effort to, well, people are doing it now, so Dave should do it. Wasn't coming from the network that he should do it. If anything, I was sad that it made us look old that we were talking about it, that we were like making like when Dave did it was funny, www, all that joking around about things. But at a certain point, it just feels like we're trying too hard, to be techy, So it may have been me saying that, but taken out of context. There's certainly no problem from a competition point of view mentioning the eating.
No, you were beyond that at that point. You were your own institution, and you could kind of talk to or about whatever you wanted. Okay.
So if his definition of it makes the network sad because it makes us look old, yeah, that's true. Because we weren't old. We weren't old. We were just we should have just been comfortable what we were doing. And I liked it I liked when Dave would do the preamble to tweeting whatever. Like, it sounded like he was making fun of it, which is great. Like, that's what does,
Yeah, absolutely.
We're honestly trying to get a thing going with Fallon. Pick up a phone, call this guy tweeting. It's just silly.
Oh, okay. You just right there. You just opened up a cat. I so badly as I still watch some of the current franchises, because if ever there's an opportunity to kind of get involved in talking about late night, there's in so many ways what's going on in television. And in late night right now, it's a fascinating time. And so I try and keep up with the late night shows to see, kind of what's happening. And plus some of Dave's writers now work for some of the other late night shows and whatnot. So I always I'll watch Fallon's monologue, and I'll try and call which joke might be a Grossman Ellenberg joke. I'll try and call those if I can. So I do watch them. There's a dream segment that me as a Letterman fan wants. Like seeing Paul, I don't know if you saw it a few months ago, just before the strike started. Paul and the band were on the Tonight Show because Questlove and them the Roots had to go to the Grammy or the either the Grammys or the Emmys or something. Brilliant. So Paul and them were. I love that. I love that so much, and I know Fallon loves Letterman. Remember when Letterman called up Carson and said, "Hey, can we use Stump the Band?" I would love to see if Fallon calls up Dave and says, "Hey, can we use elevator races?" And then maybe him and Seth have a thing that crosses their franchise together where they do elevator races. I would love if they did things like that. So that's just me coming up with.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And I'm sure like they would probably go for it. I think Fallon would love something like that, as a way. And a great way to do it is to tie it into an anniversary, because it was that building, so they could say, 30 years ago, like you do it one time and just say, 30 years ago tonight, we built a big deal. And then it was, on national television for the first time ever. You think, the Beatles, what happened? Yeah, we had David Letterman introduce the elevators, That's right. And then they could do it, and then, punchline could be Dave could be in the elevator, Well, that's a little more of a scripted moment, but that would be funny.
Like, were you there? I guess, I don't know if you would have been there right at this time when Dave sent the standby audience over to Conan's, like when Dave and Conan used to have a thing.
Was Dave at CBS at this point?
Dave was at CBS. I think it was like 95, maybe, where they had a standby audience, and they sent the standby audience over to 30 Rock to watch Late Night with Conan O'Brien. And they simulcast between the two shows. And so you had to go over and watch Late Night after.
Yeah, I wasn't there. That was a year before. I started in 96. Okay. Yeah. But that's a great idea.
I love that stuff. And then, because Fallon and Myers are a studio away from each other. They tape around the same time. Like, that would be so cool. That was some of the stuff that Dave brought to it. Him making fun of the Today Show and all that stuff. The kids call it the meta of things. And I think that does exist. But I want to ask you, because you have this wide-eyed lens. What's going on with late night television these days? Like, is it shrinking to the point where you read some of these articles and they're pretty grim You have an interesting perspective on that, and I really wanted to talk to you about that today.
I do, and I wish, you know, it felt like to me when Dave left, late night moving forward should retire that format. Anyone, including the Colbert Show, like they should have figured out to do something. By the way, this is easier said than done, right?
Absolutely,
said than done. But it just felt like the desk, that whole conceit of the physicality of it, the band, the couch, the desk, the one person, the monologue, all that stuff. It just felt like, well, two other guys are doing it great. You know, the Colbert Report certainly wasn't a talk show. It was a parody of Bill O'Reilly. And if anyone could figure out a way to do it, it would have been them to do it. But I don't even think in their defense, that's what the network wanted. The network just wanted to keep on going. But the thing that I thought was a missed opportunity with CBS now, with the strikes going on now, but with Corden leaving, that would have been the perfect opportunity. They could still do it, but I don't think they will, to break that hour up into 2.5 hours and really let your go wild and just say, okay, we're going to do 2.5 hour shows. Right off the bat, you're doing something different. And they're going to be their own thing. You know, we're going to figure out what it is. One could be personality driven, like a Mark Maron doing it. Just, you know, look, the Bob Costas didn't reinvent the wheel, but that got a lot of juice, you know, of just, okay, one guy sitting down talking to another guy, you know, or guy. I'm using that generically.
No, but like like a Tom Schneider almost.
If anything, these two shows was a perfect opportunity to break it. It shouldn't be a guy. It should be diverse. It should, do something completely different. And so now, like, the networks and everyone are getting a chance to see what life is like without them. And I think everyone's doing okay, I'm sure the reruns make enough of money to justify whatever residuals that they have to pay out for that. But I tell you, when Kimmel hangs it up, or Fallon hangs it up, it'll be a shame if they just replace it with the same thing, because who's going to do it better than Kimmel? Who's going to do it better than Fallon? Just do something different. You could be different than Fallon, and maybe Seth Meyers is the guy who could figure out what that would be. Yeah, I think honestly, if an evolution to any one of those shows, probably, especially for CBS, was if like Colbert went to a half hour, right, of just the greatly scripted stuff that they did in late night, because it's all scripted. Obviously the monologue scripted and a lot of stuff. With just maybe one guest that could be whatever they want, not tied into the network of it's got to be a big movie star, da 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 da. If somebody wants to talk to a PhD, on a topic or whatever he wanted to do, and take the pressure off, and then that half hour is followed by 3 other half hours, of 3 different shows that follow it that would have the boost of. Could you imagine a half hour of Fallon, Kimmel, or Colbert ratings? Because the second half hour, folks, it's just mathematically, the numbers go down, So from 11:30 to 12, if you stopped at 12, oh my God, that's a big number. And then it gets quarterly ratings, right? It gets pulled down. And then by music, they're not even counting anymore. Could you imagine a show from 11:30 to 12 that was then going into a new show, but with that big, you have a really good chance of holding that audience, that better chance than what Fallon, Kimmel, or Colbert would even have of holding their own audience, because you got to shake it up. It's like, okay, great. Wow, the big star is out. It's not even midnight. Oh, wait, I got to watch this other show, this new show that they're doing, whatever that new show is. They're doing it at midnight, which is a game show. Like, I think it's interesting that they're doing that, but I think they're going to do it for an hour, which is just a waste. Just, the world of YouTube is what? Like, 3 minutes and under is the ideal clip, right? To get
Yeah,
to know it.
under
To
7 minutes
watch.
or something like that.
Under
Like,
7 minutes, so the TV version of that should be keep it at 30.
Well,
Who's
at
got
30,
the
that's
time?
3 7-minute segments, basically.
Right.
Essentially.
And I get for TV, the TV version of it should be just keep it a half hour. That should be the 7 minute rule on TV, should be a half hour show, at least in this format. So long-winded way to answer your question is it should be rebooted. Like look at the TikTok videos. Like I could find myself watching an hour of TikTok without realizing it because I just watched 61-minute brilliant pieces of things, and they're brilliant because it's the algorithm. Brilliant, by the way, brilliant to me, maybe not brilliant to you. That
Sure.
illusionist, that person that's just doing really, like a lot of comedians are reinventing their stand-up into TikTok videos, which is great. They'll just be sitting, talking, and they'll do a bit of theirs. Yep. That works as a minute with a beginning, middle, and end. So yeah, I think it's going to change.
Well, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about this today, because your opinion, nothing short of expert. You have a very interesting vantage point.
You're way too kind. This is like the Joe Franklin show. Our next guest knows everything about Letterman.
And there's that worldwide pants self-deprecation that everybody is so. I'll tell you, if there's one common trait that everybody who worked for Letterman's productions, it doesn't matter where, because I've had them all from the very beginning right to the very end. If there's one common trait that you all seem to have, I think I even said it to Matt on his episode. One of you guys, it doesn't matter, the most brilliant of you, the Steve O'Donnell of you guys, who's brilliant, or even Meryl. Well, Meryl probably could do it. Could not host this show here. That's one thing I do know about this show. You were asking about it earlier. Right. It's got to be somebody who's a massive enthusiast, and everybody who worked for the Pants production, all you guys do is self-deprecate. And every single time I try and compliment, I don't even do intros with you guys listening anymore, because every time I try and edify you, I have to do it off when you're off camera.
Oh, that's funny. Well, whatever he said about me, take with a grain of salt, because it's not great. Yeah, but here's the thing. I will say you're spot on 100%. But I could, in a very clear way, without bragging, and they're not really my accomplishments, it's more my parents and Dave's, but I'm proud of the association. I will happily recount all these things that were done because they speak for themselves. It's that old expression. It's not bragging if it's true, So I could tell you 50, 100 things that happened while I was there with the show, and it might even sound like I'm bragging. That's why it's almost like sometimes you have to downplay it because it sounds like, well, this sounds like ridiculous. Or like John McCain and the guy's running for president. Did that really happen? Are they exaggerating? It almost sounds like, yeah, but it all happened. It's all true.
Well, absolutely. And the biggest of the big, like I'm going to have Joanna Jordan on here fairly soon. I'm very excited.
Joanna is gold. She is great. We're so lucky to have her. Please tell her I said hi. She's amazing. She's great.
Could not agree more. We had a really nice phone conversation the other day. And, but what you're saying here, like, again, it's not bragging because we're talking about the A-listers of the A-list world in every genre you could think of, from of course, acting and singing, of course, but then also to news, also to politics, also to like presidents of the United States, all of these people. So it isn't bragging. But the thing that I do love, and it's we all hail Dave as the greatest broadcaster in history. He is, of course he is. But the genius part about these productions, and I would say, especially once he got to CBS, with you involved, because you were the CBS guy that was in there, but you got the show. When he was at NBC, they were the pinheads, they were the enemy, but then the show evolved, and you got into sync with the network in many, many ways. You're yourself being a big part of it. So going back, Dave, the greatest broadcaster, but this show is not hailing just Dave, not even close. It's hailing the team that surrounded Dave. Everybody, from the director to the writers to the segment producers, the editors, all of the people, including the network guy. Look at this. We are your heart out is less than 60 seconds away. Vinnie Favale, I love you. I appreciate the hell out of you.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
We're having you on again.
I love what you're doing. I think this is really, really great, Mike. And sorry I couldn't give you more time, but I'm happy to do it again. And again, I'm happy to do it alongside anyone that you're doing stuff with.
We
any
did
other
that. We
guests
had we had Jerry Mulligan and Jeff Martin on an episode, so 2 writers, and then we talked. That was really good. We're going to do more of this, and I told Randy that. I said, we could have you on, well, if Barbara would do it, she's also, I'll have you and Barbara on to talk about the montage. I'd love to have Randy and you on or something like that.
Whatever you need. I'm happy to be there.
Vinny,
to
you
prompt
rock.
Or to give...
We'll talk more off camera about things. I think I'm coming out again in October. There's a thing happening for Rupert. I'll tell you about that.
Okay, good.
Just appreciate the hell out of you. Vinnie Favale, everybody. That's another episode of the Letterman Podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. Thank you and good night.
Overcoat and underpants.